have a wonderful discussion.
Thank you so much. Thanks for all the amazing job that you have done moderating the event. Hey everyone, my name is Reinis. I'm the Deputy Director General of the Latvian Investment and Development Agency. And today I would like to talk to you guys about ecosystems and vision-driven ecosystems. And it is very interesting that for Latvians, we take pride in the fact that we are creative problem solvers because of our art to connect various places and people, and therefore we are not afraid of any challenges. But if we are so good at connecting people and connecting places, then we really need to ask for some advice from our partners, from our friends, and therefore I'm very glad that today I have a panel of distinguished speakers in order to cover the question of vision-driven ecosystems together. And therefore, I would like to introduce you to the amazing speakers of today's, and now I see them as well. Hey, guys. So I would like to introduce you all to my panel, my team, that together we will uncover this question today. So let me begin by introducing Dr. Piret Tõnurist, who is from the OECD. Piret leads the team working on various innovative and agile things. Among them, she's leading a group of academia and OECD specialists working in Latvia regarding the anticipatory innovation governance and how Latvia should mobilize its resources the best. Hey, Piret, good to see you here today. Then allow me to introduce you with Suzanne Håkansson, Senior Director, Government Affairs Europe and Nordic at AstraZeneca. We are truly glad that Suzanne could join us today because she, at her position at AstraZeneca, actually what I would call is deeply involved in an ecosystem herself called the Vision Zero Cancer, and also Suzanne's previous experience both working for the Swedish government and for the private sector in terms of in fields of innovation will allow us to better understand the role that could be played by the government and by various stakeholders. So good to see you, Suzanne, and we're very glad that you're here today. Last but definitely not the least, fellow engineer, Michael Drexler. Michael represents a company, Brightstar Capital Partners, where he's the Chief Strategy Officer. The company is very proud that it does not simply do an equity investment, but also works further along the road, assisting companies and clients to work with different stakeholders and to untap maybe opportunities that sometimes are not that easy to be seen. Hey, Michael, thanks for joining. And now, before we move on to our first question, or before we start discussion, I mean, ecosystem is a buzzword, and we have been working at LIA primarily with this topic for the last year or so. So allow me to show you all a short video that my colleagues have prepared. Please, video.
Hi, my name is Håkansson and I'm General Director of Investment and Development Agency of Latvia. The ecosystems, the new big word. We treat the ecosystems as definitely an up-and-coming trend, and we see this not only as a platform where companies can meet and network and lobby for activities, but we mostly see this platform where they can meet each other, and we, as an agency, can provide new opportunities.
To create something new, to be innovative, these days you need friends. You can't do it alone. Alone it's very hard. And therefore the ecosystem approach is a very good way how to bring together the industry and create some new value.
The smart city ecosystem has allowed us to bring together all the relevant stakeholders from academia, the industry, cities, and so on, thus giving the opportunity for EDI to improve local and international visibility, meet new people, expand our network, thus allowing us to acquire new projects and the funding.
By Children's Health Ecosystem, we are reaching out to engage and to connect every aspect of children's health, being it treatment and care coordination, or health promotion to patients, families and broader society, or continuous education to health professionals and knowledge transfer to health professionals, but also applied research and innovation initiatives in every topic in children health.
Competitive ecosystem or environment can be reached only when multi-source and multidisciplinary stakeholders take active participation.
Also, we were able to hear the actual needs from the city as well as from the industry, which allowed us to adjust our scientific research directions.
Innovation today is an international and cross-sectoral thing, so it is very important for us to be a part of some pan-European value chain. From this perspective, I think that creation of ecosystems is the right move in the right moment. This makes us network, know each other better, concentrate resources and find our place in global value chain.
Ecosystem development is extension and strengthening of children's hospitals' role and responsibility beyond what's happening here in hospital and embracing all children in Latvia, but also connecting us to other countries.
Vision-driven ecosystem is based on qualitative data, digital tools and humanism.
For us in telecommunications, to inhabit the coming of the 5G times and not to be just a dumb pipe, but to do something valuable with 5G, we need more friends from startups and universities and other companies. Therefore, we really believe in ecosystem approach, how to bring everybody together.
And finally, thanks to the ecosystem, we were able to deploy as well as test our IoT technology solution in actual city environment, which is crucial for research organizations to bring those technologies from the laboratory environment to actual harsh city environment conditions.
And now we're back in Riga in studio, and allow me to start by repeating maybe something that was said by our Prime Minister Krišjānis Kariņš at the beginning of the event yesterday, that actually Latvia is on the road of smart reindustrialization, and probably in order to achieve the goals, we will have to try to do things differently, hopefully for the better. So maybe, Piret, can I ask you, could you please elaborate a bit on the ecosystem approach and maybe what is the change in the ecosystem type of innovation and the field of anticipatory innovation governance that you're working with?
Thank you, Reinis. So I think that there are three core principles that are really kind of important for the creation of ecosystems, looking at from a government perspective, is of course there are always ecosystems present within industries. So we have our own value chain, we partner with different industries. But from a government perspective, how governments have actually started to establish and engage with industrial ecosystems are connected to three things. And first of all, it's of course a kind of economic imperative of seizing the kind of opportunities that are already there. So if you have businesses that are up and coming and they actually need to kind of accelerate their growth, then the government can really help to kind of bring in the different partners of the ecosystem together to accelerate the creation of the industry itself. And also addressing some of the needs and barriers that may be up and coming in the ecosystem itself, be it human resources or technology that is needed to actually be built up in the ecosystem that is maybe not present at the moment. Secondly, there may also be a need to actually create an ecosystem that doesn't exist before. Something, for example, like your neighbors in Finland, in Sitra, for example, have been establishing is that they look at new economic opportunities that are going to be potentially quite big in the future. So things that we cannot really miss out connected to circular economy, something that wasn't really present in the companies or ecosystem wasn't really formed. So Sitra started to actually, years in advance, to actually form that ecosystem, bringing together different partners that were not actually producing in that field as of yet, but bringing those partners together to create an ecosystem that for future benefit was really important for the country, or at least the kind of the future and foresight perspective was showing it was going to be an up and coming field. And last but not least, we are also seeing a huge drive at the moment for vision or mission-driven ecosystems and ways to actually address challenges that the governments, the public sector, our countries at large are really interested in addressing. So we are establishing ecosystems around problems or challenges that need to be addressed, and something that governments alone cannot do. So we actually need very diverse partnerships to build up those ecosystems. And there are a lot of countries already establishing those ecosystems around climate change, green transition, from Norway to Austria to Denmark. So for example, in Denmark, the Innovation Fund, for example, is not establishing or creating those partnerships or the ecosystem itself. It, by different calls, establishes a kind of a boundary spanner or ecosystem coordinator to create a climate change or a green transition-oriented ecosystem that starts to coordinate that. And then they also create a roadmap on how to get there. And why it's important to have a kind of a long-term perspective or a government perspective or LIA's perspective as we're working together in Latvia at the moment is that most companies that are not very R&D oriented, their strategies are quite short-term. They think in 6 months, a year, year and a half maximum. So we actually need to build up ecosystems or technologies around that. We need an ecosystem partner that allows to think also in long-term effects. So how do we build common vision-driven strategies that surpass the kind of the short-term logic of companies themselves? And these are things that LIA, for example, and we can do also scenario building, strategic foresight for those missions, and use system thinking within the ecosystems to actually get there.
Thanks, Piret. You actually touched upon a couple of points there. Just for the clarity, mission approach for you guys that are not that familiar with the term, a space mission would be a traditional, conventional example to use, that you have an overarching mission. But before we actually turn to Suzanne for the story of what I call a functioning and very exciting ecosystem, Michael, if I'm not mistaken, it was Reagan who said there are two horrible things that you can hear from the government is that we are here and we're here to help. So can you maybe reflect a bit on what Piret said, and is it really that government or informal bodies can somehow shape the involvement and the kind of strategic thinking of companies?
Absolutely. No, I do agree with Piret, but I do also agree with Ronald Reagan to some degree in the sense that there's a very subtle but important difference between setting a mission and setting a straitjacket. And so to belabor another American president, John F. Kennedy said, let's put a man on the moon. He should have really said, let's put a person on the moon, but that's by the by. And he didn't say, let's put a man on the moon in the following prescribed, micromanaged way. He gave the mission, and then he let the ecosystem, in this case, the space ecosystem, do its magic. And that's how I think it needs to be done. Government and society need to have a strong part in these ecosystems, but it needs to be at the vision and ambition setting as opposed to micromanagement. That's where globally many ecosystems go wrong, through well intentions, but ultimately wrong execution.
Thanks, thanks for that. Suzanne, maybe you could tell us a bit more about what is your experience and how you have seen the most productive involvement of public players, also maybe some actions from other players, and with your story, with your experience, and also the particular ecosystem.
Yes, and thank you so much for having me. And first, I also want to say that I do agree with Piret that the government's role when it comes to creating framework conditions should not be underestimated. That is really important. But I think also working in ecosystems can help us also help governments formulating what is actually needed to be done in the systems. So I will spend my minutes highlighting, first just tell you briefly what the Vision Zero cancer ecosystem is. And then I have six lessons learned that I want to share with you in the end of my minutes here. So Vision Zero Cancer is a joint initiative by the Swedish Association of Local Authorities and Regions, and that is the body that collects the regions of Sweden, which are in turn responsible for carrying out healthcare in Sweden. And cancer care is organized in 6 regional unities. So that's one of the parties. The person who's the National Cancer Coordinator is key in this initiative. We are also 2 private companies, AstraZeneca and Elekta. Elekta is a radiation company and AstraZeneca is a pharmaceutical company. Both with, so AstraZeneca is half Swedish-based, half UK-based, as you may know, but we do have a big footprint in Sweden and a lot of assets there. We also collaborate with the Stockholm School of Economics, where we actually have our office, our physical place where we meet. But in addition to these 5 parties, we also have a lot of other stakeholders, like the patient organizations, academia. We have the healthcare profession, representatives both from the regions and from actual hospitals, so clinicians are in this project. And we have industrial associations. And the project and the initiative came about as a result of a combination really of informal talks between some of us. We were around 8 people that initiated this initiative. But also this developed into more structured talks if we could actually do something together to improve the situation for cancer patients and also people working in cancer care and the competitiveness for businesses with roots in Sweden and internationally. And so we started having these discussions. We came up inspired by the traffic vision, which is zero people killed in road accidents in Sweden. But we created this Vision Zero for cancer, which means that we want to transform cancer to either a curable or a chronic disease. But we think that with time, it's fully possible to actually make people survive a cancer diagnosis. But to achieve that, we really need to have to work in a lot of fields at the same time. Luckily, we met during the spring of 2019. Luckily, the Swedish Innovation Agency had a call for projects in their vision-driven health project. So we got together, we wrote an application, and we actually got some government funding. We got the decision during the fall. And in the mid of November 2019, we kicked off and we decided to start working on our vision with lung cancer. So this core team, but also a broader team with stakeholders and the reference group. And as a group, we aim to address the generic but key obstacles for cancer care. But we also seek to spur innovation and improve organizational preconditions for prevention, early detection, quality in care, rehabilitation, and follow-up through health data system. In addition to that, we also look at the organizational perspective. So we work with leadership in oncology care and also the economics of investments in cancer care in all of these phases throughout the patient journey. So it's quite a complex setting in a way. And to facilitate initially, we decided to start with lung cancer. But since the end of 2019, we've been working really closely together. We've started a number of projects. There are 10 projects now up and running. We had a large number of meetings, both small and bigger ones, and made quite big progress, I would like to say. And I don't have time to go into that now, but instead I will turn to the lessons learned. The first thing is that an ecosystem like the one we have must be based upon equal interest and equal importance to all the parties involved. It's also really important that you have the people actually responsible for decisions in the systems you work with in the ecosystem. So this is completely different, right, from how we are used to work in industry when we come up with an idea and then we roll it up and we want people to buy into it. This is something we're in this together. And secondly, really important to respect, to have integrity and also respect that in these ecosystems, we don't sell individual drugs or products, for example. We work with the generic conditions that will pave the way then for our products. Of course, that's why we have a business interest in this. But in this ecosystem, we work with the things that really contribute in a generic way to our joint vision. That's important for this ecosystem. And then I fully realized we've been talking about in this meeting today about other kinds of ecosystems before. Yeah, and the third thing is that we are aligned when it comes to our vision. There's no use being in this is like the entry ticket to work on this platform, is that you really buy into the vision and that you also are ready to sort of think about how you can contribute to fulfill the vision. And these things will be completely different things. It means that AstraZeneca as a drug selling company needs to buy into the vision of prevention. Less people should even get the cancer diagnosis in the future. And we are willing to invest in this and work on this and buy into this because that's the only way to reach the vision. It won't be reached if we only sell drugs. So these kind of things, and that's quite challenging for a lot of parties, I would say. Also, we work in an agile way. And this is something we had to make an effort to do because it's easy to align on a big, beautiful strategy and be very high level. But you cannot underestimate the importance of taking these small steps that will lead you towards the vision. Sometimes really simple things, but if you don't deal with them, we'll get nowhere. So agile way of working, not spend too much time of making perfect documents or a perfect strategy, but step by step, coming closer to our results that are measurable. And finally, also I want to say that we have invested in having very competent coordinators helping us, being very transparent, being inclusive, making sure that we share all materials, that we are invited to each other's meetings, that we learn together in this process so we can grow. And we all realize that we don't have all the answers from the beginning. And with all these things in place, and we're learning as we speak, I think we've already taken some really big steps towards especially better results in the steps when it comes to early detection of cancer, better diagnosis, and better coordination of health data. Those are only some examples.
Thanks, Suzanne. A lot of interesting issues raised there. We're a bit behind the schedule, so Piret, just very, very short. I know it's going to be quite vague, but we heard the example of Swedish counterpart of LIA organizing a call for a practical support for a project that would be aligned with the mission. To what extent, say percentage-wise, to what extent for the success of ecosystem to function, there should be practical instruments that would provide funding, would be very robust, if I may say, and to what extent, percentage-wise, is the role of informal networking and various this so-called soft support, in your opinion?
In a very short format, I think it's 30-70. It's 30%, of course, you need funding to actually kind of push people to make the collaboration. But a lot of the kind of the real agenda lies in finding the right partners. So as Suzanne has well described, is that kind of really coming up with the core principles of how we are collaborating towards that mission itself. So Vinnova in Sweden has also, they have also missions where they're participating more on the ground because they don't have the partners that they have those principles. So they take at least initially a bigger role in setting up those ecosystems. While when they have those partners in place or have partners that can potentially trust, then of course you have a more hands-off role to actually do that. But 37 is, I think, very rough numbers, if you want kind of arbitrary numbers connected to the answer.
I know it was a challenge. Thanks, Piret. Michael, so I mean, we heard about what is ecosystem, some of the track record. From standing in your shoes, does this approach open any new opportunities, either for, say, equity investors or for companies participating? What's your take on the subject?
So absolutely, for us as investors, and we work a lot with family-owned businesses that are often a bit more mature than startups, which often are associated with ecosystems. But each of those has built out their own ecosystem over the years. And as an investor, you have to go in and firstly be very humble and respectful of that, because those ecosystems are what makes the magic of those family-owned businesses. And first and foremost, those ecosystems bring to us resilience, a multitude of inputs. While we bring our own value as investors, it also helps us see new avenues and new inputs and new insights. It brings us diversity, because never forget, a proper ecosystem is not a monoculture. Mm-hmm. And so that organic growth of views is very important for us. In a very mundane way, of course, it brings shared contacts and networks. And so often we see our next deal through the ecosystem of the old deal. But with all of this, again, ecosystems are neither monocultures nor transactional things. So they need to involve symbiosis between the actors. So you need to, first of all, bring something and then know what you bring and know the limitations of what you bring and how it interacts with the other actors. And as a last point, in an ecosystem, it's not like a hotel where you check in or you check out. You're there for the long term with all your contributions. And so you better not screw it up. And you should always keep in mind that for a business owner, probably just after I'm here from the government and I'm here to help, to hear I'm from private equity and I'm here to help is probably just as scary. So yeah, you have to overcome that. But to emphasize, ecosystems are very, very important. They're always, by definition, stronger than some of the parts, and that makes them very, very useful for investors. Mm-hmm. Nothing has proven this more than the recent crisis. And they do need to involve symbiosis of all parties involved. And so there is no stronger or weaker or better or worse. Everyone brings their contribution, and it's in that joint contribution that is the strength of an ecosystem.
If I just may, can ask a short follow-up question. Basically, I know I'm trying, to pick on you guys a bit and try to challenge you a bit with yes or no questions. But say if you're looking at a company, whether to invest or not, whether such participation in an ecosystem where you know that, as you said, that it is not just simply a transactional thing, it is a relationship thing. In your view and in views of your company, does the membership in an ecosystem and being an active part can actually result in practical increase of the value in your eyes of the particular company?
Absolutely, and that to me is the difference between an ecosystem and an echo chamber. An ecosystem will allow the company to evolve and be more resilient because of that multitude of inputs. If the company starts believing its own story a bit too much, that's usually the beginning of failure. And therefore, as an investor, the beginning of when you start losing your investment. So 100% ecosystems make companies stronger.
Great, thanks for the comment. We now move to some sort of the second part of the discussion, and it's very interesting the points that you raised, because together with Piret's team we did a similar way of surveying and series of workshops actually on trying to analyze for the first pilot groups. We were very agile to ask the questions of what do participants see as the greatest benefits already or the future functions that they would expect that partnership of such ecosystems should bring. And some of the results were quite interesting. That, for instance, in Latvia, so participants expect that partnership in an ecosystem should assist in sort of collective lobbying and trying to accordingly organize the support instruments in order to be more relevant to the particular chains. I suppose in a mission-oriented world that makes even greater role. Also international networking. So basically what was mentioned by Piret as well as by the rest of you guys of bringing new international players around the table. Also say bringing the players to the table in sense of very practical level. So partnerships in research consortiums, investments, etc., as well as pilot projects and the availability of actually approach state and public agencies more directly in order to facilitate development of pilot projects, sandboxing, etc. So my question maybe, and we are indeed moving to the end of discussion, would be maybe either something from what I just mentioned or what you guys discussed. Maybe, if you dare, if you know a bit about Latvia or the region where we're at, what would be one or two main emphasis or main functions or most relevant objectives of an ecosystem that should be implied in Latvia? And while Michael and Suzanne is preparing their answers, Piret, you're a bit more familiar with the topic, so maybe we could start with you.
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much. Very interesting question as well. Of course, the ecosystems that we interviewed are different as well, but of course, Latvia is a small country in itself, so the ecosystems themselves are going to be smaller. So I think that the first thing that is very, very important is actually the connections to global value chains and regional value chains as well, to have those connections in place. And if it's difficult for single companies to reach there, then actually going with an ecosystem or presenting an ecosystem approach for bigger partners externally, I think it's a really good way to actually build up the ecosystems, bring in new investments from abroad and also partnerships from abroad to Latvia itself. I think that the second one that we're talking about today is really the kind of the need to also introduce kind of more vision-driven approaches to the ecosystems themselves. So to actually also start building ecosystems based on visions towards certain goals. I think that the symptom of, we see only the kind of ecosystems as a way to lobby the government is a symptom of less mature ecosystems, in a sense that if you have a concrete goal, you actually start to assign your resources to reach that rather than having a very broad approach about, well, we want everybody in the ecosystem to do well. And I think last but not least, I can't say it enough as well, is that with what we are doing with ecosystems as well, is we're bringing kind of an anticipatory approach to really help the ecosystem partners with a little bit of foresight scenarios and different futures for the ecosystem themselves, to introduce those capabilities to the ecosystems to actually look at different opportunities and signals that are coming in their industry, so that you can actually start thinking in a more kind of a medium or long-term perspective as well, where the industry is developing. Mm-hmm. So these are the kind of the three things that I think that the ecosystems and the secretariats or the support systems can really help out in Latvia.
Excellent. Thanks. Maybe I would turn to Michael for your conclusion. And also a business partner of mine once told me that all opportunities are ugly at the beginning, because if they would be beautiful, then everyone would see them. So how about very practical side and your take on the subject?
Yes, I agree. I wouldn't frame it in terms of beauty, but I would say the best ideas are always obvious after you've had them and unobvious before. I think in the context of Latvia, you're at a very interesting position. You're between, in some ways, the East and the West when it comes to the Nordics. You're in societal terms at the junction between tradition and the future, and that makes for a very fertile ground for ecosystems. And so I think the cards are very well aligned, and the purpose, which I fully agree with Piret, of bringing in other participants and opening to international connections ought to be a very important aim. I will be careful with lobbying, and my example on this one is sort of the grandparent of all ecosystems, Silicon Valley. I think in recent years they have focused a little bit too much on lobbying and a bit too little on how to improve the world or how to improve things, and that means they've lost that connectivity with the real world and society, and that's now being held against them, and no ecosystem should end up there. No, they're going to be just fine. They're going to evolve their way out of it like they almost always do, but I think that's an important lesson when it comes to lobbying. Dialogue is fine, and exchange of opinions is fine. Lobbying is not. And last point, sharing of resources and infrastructure in every ecosystem is very important. That would be my thoughts.
Thanks. Suzanne, I really like that Michael also iterated the normative aspect, that actually the normative side of the ecosystems and actually how it builds into practical cooperation as well. And I mean, you had the amazing 6, if I may say so. So if you should pick some of them to conclude, which would be those?
Yeah, then I would like to start in also, like the two other speakers underline, that this is not really about lobbying, or I think it's really important to get away from that kind of thinking. That so if we have if we talk about vision-driven innovation or mission-driven innovation, we have to rely that we do have the same mission and vision, and so it's more about trying to understand each other and how all the parties can contribute to reach to our common goal. I think that's a different way of thinking, and we need to work on changing our ways of thinking when it comes to that. Then when it comes to Latvia, I can't say I would not be a good advisor because I know too little, but what I could say, because I think there are some similarities. Sweden is also a small country, even if it's bigger than Latvia, of course, but there are some really good advantages, and that is that the ecosystem, you know a lot of people know a lot of people, so you easily cover a lot of people that have a very important positions and that can actually have the power jointly to do things together. And in that context, I think the public-private collaboration and also with academia is key, and that the government must be very aware that it feels a really important role, because it can come with like a quality stamp. It's great if you can help with financing, but also with a okay stamp for people to actually collaborate, because we're still not so used to doing that between the public and private sector in our countries. So I think that's a very important point.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, I think that last point also kind of stresses out, or actually crosses out, the part of kind of lobbying and rather dialogue-based interaction, and simply public side being just one of the stakeholders interested within the communication, apart from the mission kind of umbrella, if I may say so. Unfortunately, I mean, we're running out of time, and it's been an amazing discussion. And what I want to say, maybe just another last final word. In your own personal view, how much time does it take for a group of stakeholders to be built into an ecosystem? By the definition that we have, so how much time does it? I know it's a tough question, but like 6 months is enough in order to get a general understanding. A year, 5 years, 50 years, just a general take. Michael, be brave. I want to start with you.
I think you can sow the seeds within a year because of the trust you need to build and what the symbiosis is. You won't be fully functional and at scale before 3 to 5 years. And then you're only really going to be proven, I think, in a decade. fortunately or unfortunately, you can't do these things in a hurry.
Mm-hmm. Suzanne, your guess?
Yeah, I can just agree with you, and then I can add that in addition to that kind of time span, when you talk about weeks and years, you also have to invest a lot of your personal time, right? You have to have people that invest their days and weeks and thoughts when they're awake during the 24 hours we have, right? So a lot of engagement and personal time will need to be invested.
Excellent.
In addition.
Excellent. Thanks. And Piret?
It depends. It depends on how hard you're pushing, how hard you have the ownership for it, because not all networks or ecosystems actually require trust to be functional to reach their goal. So you can function well in networks as well without trust. It just functions a little bit differently. Then you have to have a kind of a single-minded vision and goal to actually get there, and also other interests and incentives in line with that goal. If you have more complex goals, then I fully agree with Michael that it's like impossible to kind of get to a functional ecosystem in less than 3 to 5 years.
I mean, one of the key takeaways that you all guys emphasized again and again is definitely trust building together with mission orientation, and these sort of backbones, I think, all normative kind of builds into then already whatever can develop via ecosystem. So I am sure that this was such an event that will help definitely to develop the ecosystem approach in Latvia. I will take the courtesy and probably contact you afterwards with colleagues in order to involve you in our work more. But again, Piret, Suzanne, Michael, thanks a lot for your time and for being here today. And we really appreciate your inputs. And the same to all the ones watching. Thanks for your time. I hope you really enjoyed this discussion. And let's all stay safe. Thanks.
Thank you.